Hi there, I'm Dave Marks and I'm going to talk you through how to get some great bass sounds using the EBS TD660. First up, let's get plugged in straight away. Right into the front, my DI's on the front, which is great, means it's straight into the desk. On with the power, on with the standby. First up, I just need to set the gain control to get a nice healthy signal going into the amp. And what I want is that when I really hit it, this little red peak light comes on. That lets me know that I'm driving the EQ section properly. So we're ready to go. It's just a matter of using the filters to get different kinds of sounds. So let's start with a deep sort of Motown sound. Treble and brightness all the way off. Boost a little bass. Maybe boost around 200 on this. And I'm going to go front pickup. From there to, let's say, a 70s prog rock type thing, Chris Squire, Geddy Lee. Treble, a little bit extra there, some brightness. Mids I'll pull back, and the bass at 12 o'clock. And then finally maybe something for funk. Drop the treble again, boost the mid-range, a little bit of boost on the bass, and I'm going to go all the way up on my neck pickup. So instantly I've got three really nice workable bass sounds with just a few tweaks. Let's take a look at the back panel on the TD660. There's lots of great features here, so to get the most out of your amp, it's important to know what it can do. First up, our mains connector is a 3-point kettle lead, so that's an industry standard, but just below it, our fuse. If the fuse ever goes on your amp, there's nothing worse than having to unscrew panels and take them off. With this, we just pop the fuse out, replace it, back in. It takes about 10 seconds. Looking at all the features on the back here, first up we have phantom power. Phantom power allows you to use this amp to send electricity into other things. So for example, if you had a pedal or an active bass, rather than using batteries in them, you could plug a stereo cable in the front of your amp, turn the phantom power on, and it'll power it for the entire gig. It's especially useful if you're using an active bass and you worry that your battery's going to run out. You can immediately go around, hit the phantom power, problem solved. There's two inputs here for the remote. EBS make the RM4, which is a foot switch controller, and on it you can control the character, the filter, the drive, and also mute. So you can switch between each of those settings without having to go back and touch the amp during your gig. We also have a tuner output here, so even when your amp is muted, you can still send signal out to it. It means you can tune between songs and no one in the audience will hear. Below that we have a line out. You can use the line out to slave together two amps. So if I wanted a really big rig, 2 heads, 4 cabinets, I can just control them using the line out and the volume control on my first amp. We also have an effects send and return. So this means I can take any pedals and put them into an effects loop. So I send the bass pure into the amp and all the pedals work in the loop. What's nicest about this is there's an effects mix. So if I wanted to use distortion, for example, and I thought, I'd like to be able to blend the distortion with the clean sound, but maybe my pedal won't let me do that. I put the pedal in the loop and dial in maybe 50% clean, 50% distorted. So you get that harsh sort of buzzing distorted sound, but you don't lose the deep full bass sound that you have. For connecting your power amp up to your cabinets, we're using speak-on connectors here. Speak-ons are heavy duty, they clip in, they're never going to rattle loose, and they last for years and years, so they're a really good professional solution. In terms of the type of cabinets that you use, you have lots of options. Some amps you can only run with a certain ohmage. With this you can run from 2 to 8. So if I have a 4-ohm cabinet, it's not a problem. And on the next gig, if I put 2 4-ohm cabinets in, it gives me 2 ohms of resistance. I don't even need to make adjustments. There's no switch to flip. The amp automatically works. Anything between 2 and 8 is not a problem. Let's take a look at some of the extra features that are built into this amp. So straight away we have this character switch. The character switch basically works as a preset EQ. So you get a bass boost and a treble boost with a little scoop in the mid-range. So if I were to take it out, that's my flat bass sound. And that gives me that EQ curve without having to go in and tweak all the individual knobs. I hit one button and it's straight on. The next one here is the filter active. I can use this to deactivate the entire EQ. So if I were to do an EQ setting, for example, rolling off all of the top end and boosting up the bass there, that gives me a specifically affected sound. Hit filter active, and I've got a completely dry sound. I might have an EQ that I really like for certain songs, but the guy in the front of house would like that I have a flat sound for most of it, so instead of me dialing it in, having to dial it back out, one button, on and off. Moving past the EQ, we then have our drive channel here, and the drive, we can activate the tube mode. Everybody who's used tube amps knows you get warmth, you get a sort of warm, more overdriven sound out of that. We can adjust the amount of drive from 0. And as you turn it up, you get a slightly more aggressive tone and a little bit more warmth and roundness in the sound. I can also hit the drive boost here, which gives me a more sort of linear distorted sound. It really begins to get aggressive and break up there. So the ordinary drive gives us warmth, the drive boost breaks it up and gives a much dirtier sort of tone. Past these, we then have our DI options: post EQ, speaker simulator, and ground lift. Post EQ means that what you send to the front of house uses your EQ settings. If we set this off, they get the flat bass signal. Speaker simulator, if you're just running to the DI with no mic on your cabinet, that simulates the sound for a little bit of extra room or warmth that you would get from a cab. And the ground lift, if you have a hum in the room that you're in, perhaps the lights, the wiring isn't great, you can use the ground lift and it'll instantly get rid of that hum, which means the signal you send to the front of house is pure. So almost every bass player alive uses compression. Even if you don't use it whenever you're playing, the guy in front of house will add it, or the guy in the studio will add it. So if you want to get that smooth, controlled, compressed sound, you need either a really good pedal or an incredible compressor built into your amp. If anybody's used the EBS Multi-Comp, you'll know it's basically the best pedal compressor you can get, and it was modelled on the compressor they built into these amps. Very, very simple. Just like the pedal, you have your gain control, which sets the sensitivity going in, and then the compression. As I turn this up, this little blue light comes on, which lets me show when the compression is kicking in. And I can use subtle, small amounts of compression just to smooth out the sound slightly, or I can crank it right up, and it still gives me like a heavily compressed sound, but it never gives that sucked out feeling you get from compressors where you lose the touch sensitivity on the instrument. This can be great if you're playing either sort of solo style bass or anything that has a lot of detail in the lines and you really need people to hear every aspect of the bass sound. The notch filter is a really handy feature built into this EQ. Sometimes when you play in different rooms, you'll find there's particular frequencies that sound very harsh or ring out a lot. Now this can be bad on electric, but if you have an acoustic bass or a double bass, it can ruin your entire gig. So the way we use the notch filter is to adjust our mid control right back to where it says notch, and then we use our frequency sweep here, and you'd basically play for a bit. And as you sweep through, you're looking for that frequency that suddenly jumps out really harsh. And when you find it, it's suddenly going to pull right down. The great thing with this is it has what's called a narrow Q. It means the number of frequencies affected is very small. So it just isolates this problem and gets rid of it without changing too much of your bass sound.